All right. Well, I'm here with Drew Crisp of Manchester Christian Church. He is the online community pastor, and we have been talking with him, but I'm not sure that we've had the best technology luck right now, which is kind of ironic because
Nope.
we're talking about communications and technology.
Yes,
Uh, but this is one of those things that we have to deal with, right, Drew?
that's it.
Especially you with the many people that you serve in Manchester Christian. So we will be posting that video that we've already done to talk about some of the things that Manchester Christian is doing shortly. But as for right now, we'll just pick up a little bit of the conversation. But
Yeah.
Drew, if you could share again with us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. Online campus pastor here, and this is honestly a fairly new role for me as of February at this church, and so been interested to figure out how do we connect to people in this digital age, in this new environment that we find ourselves in. How can we continue to engage people with the gospel utilizing these technologies? So my belief is the earth is the Lord's, everything in it, even these technologies. And so he's wanting us to utilize these to reach out and engage people here in New Hampshire. And so I'm excited to be a part of that. So that was February. And then it really, the gas started picking up. You know, we started pumping the gas and started moving pretty fast. But every day, it feels like every day there's a new challenge, a new conversation. And so you just have to adapt and be flexible, but it's pretty exciting.
It
Yeah.
is, and you've been thrown into the fire, and we're so grateful you're here to share with us. I feel like it's so great to hear from some of the larger churches who have a staff and who are working with communications to be able to help give ideas for other churches who are in the same boat or and maybe a little bit smaller and can kind of use some of this information to think through what applies for them at their church, knowing that every church is different and that there's so many different pieces to it. What's exciting to me is that Manchester Christian has had an online ministry going for some time, as I know other churches have, and how appropriate that there's a team and everyone to work on that. I'm curious, just because we've had a technical difficulty here just now, how are you handling those in your situation?
Yeah, what's interesting is the stakes are pretty high for churches when it comes to these technical difficulties because this is kind of the main portal of getting the service out to people, and so it feels like there's a little bit more at stake, right? And so we ask for high degree of patience, and we pay attention quite a bit to making sure double checking every code that we copy and paste to go to plan to send out and make sure that we've double checked it as many times as we can, and then honestly just put it in God's hands and just ask that that goes out and goes out well and to the best of our ability. But it's definitely taken a team approach for all of us to make sure that we're asking the right questions and being clear about what service goes where and how can we ensure that it's organized and planned out the best way we can. So one tool that we've really been trying to utilize is Vimeo Premium. So essentially, if you think about communications like Buffer, something like that, that schedules out posts, it's essentially doing that for your live broadcast as well. Vimeo has kind of transitioned their, I think their like business model into help figure that piece out. How do we take live broadcasting and get it scheduled so people can push it out that way? And so that's something we're pretty new to the game on because we were using an encoder, but this is something that I think would help alleviate some of that stress, and it seems to be somewhat of a pretty reliable platform. So yeah.
Yeah, so do you mean because I think of a few different factors when it comes to streaming from a church service. One is things you can control.
Yes.
So you can control, services that have great bandwidth, is the tool reliable? Is the technology really good? Are there the types of features that are, align with what we need as a church? And then there's those unfortunate pieces of we can't control someone's internet speed at their house.
Right.
And we can't control, what service provider they're using and how it happens to act that day,
Yes.
because it can just freeze for no reason. And so I know that is a frustrating piece for so many who are, trying to pay attention online, and then it freezes and they're like, oh my gosh, now what? Or it pauses and there's something. Um, so we can't really control that, but how do you manage that maybe? And then the other question is, how are you, what maybe are the best practices to help avoid that?
Yeah. So, well, we have people on our staff who kind of run as tech help, and so there's a list of questions that come up. A lot of times, can't hear the service. It's like you're muted, and so helping kind of guide some of those things. Refreshing is a huge point. Like, just please just refresh, and then your browser will kind of clue in that this is what's happening, and so just making sure that just some of the basics are covered. And so there's like a list of frequently, asked questions in regards to tech. And then for us, really, it just becomes making sure that the service, we moved away from live and we did everything pre-recorded. And so basically our line is we broadcast live, but it's not a live service. So there's no one in the building on Sunday mornings. That's it's all been done ahead of time, and we're pushing out mainly because we want to ensure that the quality is the best it can be. And so we work hard to make sure the service is we're communicating what we want to communicate, and then we're getting it to where we need to get it and send it out. So we've uploaded it to where we need it so that it can be downloaded where it needs to be. And so we've stopped going live. We were going live online before all this happened, but we kind of pivoted our ministry focus to now do pre-recorded things. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's huge. And I think that's some of the biggest issue as we find, even just today as we are live streaming, that it didn't connect. It didn't do what we thought it was. The audio broke down. And then you're stuck, potentially with your three campuses with hundreds of viewers who are like, what just happened to my pastor? He's no longer on TV.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So that
just
makes sense. Are you creating maybe one video and putting it up? Like how does that work?
Yeah, so we've got two. So essentially, the worship is the same. We've got two main speakers here at Manchester Christian Church. We've got our Concord campus pastor, John Rose, who speaks, and then Bo Chansey here at the Bedford campus will speak, and then that will go out to two different campuses. But so essentially, those are going. What goes to Concord is going to be John, but it's going to be the worship, and so we're taking a lot more pieces and then blending them together. So there's a lot more producing happening, video producing and editing. We're taking a welcome, a guided communion time, if that's a part of the service, different elements of the services, and they're getting kind of woven together now. And so we're kind of editing a lot more than we normally probably would. We would just send to the live room, and what's happened in the room is what gets broadcasted. But now it's a little bit different because of this situation. And so then Dropbox is, gets into Dropbox. We take it, organize it, and get it to where we need to upload it, and then send it out that way. Our team does that, and then manages what happens from there on out. The hosting and the chatting and the follow up.
Ah, I see. And so that's part that we'll be loading later, because we missed that part. For everyone else, is that Manchester Christian has a wonderful process for engaging the online community during this time, so that their efforts might not be during that live portion, but really during to maybe share that message, but it's to engage with people as they're watching, which I think it's an interesting shift of resources as I'm starting to see this, because at first I must be honest, I was like, oh, it just seems so inauthentic if we're just watching a recording on Sunday. Like that just seems kind of weird. There's something in me that I was surprised. I was like, oh, well that just doesn't, it seems so produced, and is that okay? And I was just kind of torn with myself. But now, as you remind me of that piece, it's wise in some cases because you're focusing now on the people and their actions. So now you can catch people, and all the people who normally would be engaging and speaking, can now be supporting people as they're engaging with the content and the worship and the message. So that is a whole different way of looking at a service. I feel like that might take some of us, especially me, a few seconds to just say, is this what is how does this work? And it's really a major shift in how I think church is generally thought of. And I don't know that it's, I mean, share with us here. I'd love to hear anyone here for pastors, other members of churches, what you think about that, this new way of looking at church, if you will, to have a pre-recorded service, but then be able to then really be there for people as they're watching it. So this is a kind of different thought process. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Feel free to share your thoughts here. But you know, what were you when thinking about that at all, Drew? I mean, because it makes so much sense. Because, like you said, the quality and the worst thing is to all of a sudden not have anything.
Right.
So it makes sense. It's so different.
Well, one of the things too that I think has been pretty cool are these online communities, and you've probably seen these quite a bit. But just being able then to set those up ahead of time, and to be able to say in the service, "Hey, we want to talk with you." We're going through a series called "I've Got Issues" right now. First one was health. This last week was on anger. So they're very something you can really dialogue about. There's a lot of talking points and practical life application. And so we want to talk with you. We want to see what you think about some of what was spoken. Please join us with these online communities. And so there's Zoom groups, and it's put out there on mcconline.com. We want people to sign up, find a time that's convenient for you, and we'll walk through the message, and we'll kind of talk. So a lot of really is engagement. How can we offer access points for people to engage with what they heard? I think gone are the days of sit in the lecture and then say when you need to, and then put your dollar in the pot and then head on out. Like, no, what do you think? Like, how do you engage with the gospel? What is Jesus saying to you right now? There's something he's doing in this space. I want to hear what it is. Like, share with me. And so if there's any way we can engage people in that way, I mean, this has been amazing season of ministry because we have access and time. And so people are more willing to go, okay, I'll entertain you a little bit. I don't know if I agree with that, and it's like, absolutely, let's talk, let's talk
Oh,
about
that's such
why.
a good point.
Yeah.
Now, something I'm hearing from many other churches on a bunch of different calls, not even just with in New Hampshire, but I was listening to a call with pastors from Texas. And one of the things that seems to be a reoccurring theme is that they're seeing more viewers, I guess, or more people are tuning in
Mm-hmm.
to the online service than maybe would actually come to church. Is
Mm-hmm.
that something you're seeing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, we've kind of parsed out, so we'll send to a separate Facebook group at 9:30 and 11 for our Concord campus, and we've seen things grow there. And so there's different places we've kind of tried to diversify the bandwidth, and so we are starting to see each one of those grow separately, which has been really cool. So there's been consistent growth since
Amazing.
yeah, since the
Have you seen that? Oh, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. I didn't mean
No,
to.
go
And
ahead.
I think you were answering my question, which was since March, have you seen an increase
Mhm.
in your online viewership as previous since you've had this for 3 years?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's a little bit, those analytics are a little difficult because of people not being able to go to physical campuses. There's definitely been a huge surge, but a lot of it probably just because our own members, are tuning in online when they normally would have just come to a physical campus. So trying to track some of that to see, and really asking people to share it as much as they can. It's like, and I've made a challenge. I'll say it, Dina. I will continue to share songs, share the recording artist until everybody in our church has shared our service. So that, I only know 3 share songs. So you don't want me singing these songs, like, just little fun things like that. Like, hey, share it. You share funny dog videos. Why would you share our service?
Yeah.
You know, But yeah.
I'm gonna have to hear you sing a Cher song at some point then. But that is too funny. So
Yep.
I'm here with Drew Crisp of Manchester Christian, the online community pastor, and thank you for tuning in, folks. And I'm excited. Some of the things that we had been talking about earlier, which are specific to online church, is critically engagement piece is a little different, and leveraging technology in different ways. Also, the way that it is shared, the way that you might want to plan for this is different. I think, you definitely have a team. So, not all churches are going to have a team of be able to put together a video pre recorded and send it out. But it doesn't take a lot these days. I mean, you don't have to have fancy. I mean, you can do a Zoom call like this, record it, and then throw it into iMovie or something
Yeah.
and put it together. You definitely need maybe a tech person or someone with a little bit of a tech background to do that, and an eye for that. But it's not as hard as
Right.
some people might make it out to be. I'm impressed with some of the tools that can be used nowadays for anybody to use. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that for smaller churches.
Yeah, I mean, one thing too is like, and thinking about what it looks like and what it sounds like, and which is interesting. I'm coming from a cave right now. It feels like this room is very cavernous, but it's like just thinking through like what's the audio quality and then what's like the lighting, and so paying attention that natural lighting is hitting you, frontal. If you do have access to a window close to you, or if you can just get some cheap lighting to hit you, and just thinking more in like a production sense of as far as 3-point lighting, and just honestly what it looks like and sounds like is going to be a huge piece to being able for people to be accessible to your message. Because if they're spending the entire video going leaning in or trying to hear you, or it's too loud at the peaking, um, that's going to be a distraction to maybe what you're trying to say. And so and again, you're right, these resources aren't that expensive anymore, and so getting ability to get some good mics, get some good lighting, and then just stay consistent and just keep putting things out there so that people can access it, when because you'll be the person they'll lean in and go, okay, what's pastor saying about this? I need to know. I'm at a point in my life now where I need to know kind of what is there anything to offer anymore? Is there any word of hope? And you'll be that pastor that they'll want to lean in, and really doesn't matter the lighting and the audio. At that point, as long as your consistent message is out there and they can lean in, it's reliable, then it's worth it. It's worth our time and efforts. So
I love that. And it's such a different shift in thinking. And I think it's going to continue. And I know that, some of the churches or members of churches that I've spoken to, they want to continue doing online. And they said, we love you, church, but we may not be coming back for different reasons because of injury. It's hard for them to be mobile. I'm thinking some of the more older members who it's hard, or we happen to have a sport at that time, but we can come and watch it later. So there's a there's a more embracing, I think, of this that might be happening after maybe some of the rules and stay at home efforts are kind of done, to continue to do online.
yeah. The vision that came out of this church, I don't know when this series was, maybe a year, 2 year ago, 2 years ago. Decentralized was something that that God had put on Bo's heart, and a lot of it was this idea of how do we take the gospel and decentralize it. It's such you come to us at this 1 hour at this time, and that's when you get to hear the life-giving message of Jesus. And it's like I don't know if that fits our transient culture anymore. How do we decentralize this and get it accessible? Why are we fighting these battles, like you said, of sports? Hey, my son wants to be in soccer and I can't make it, and then it's like, well, I guess you then are not going to be able to be part of the kingdom. And it's like, well, hold on. Maybe there's a way we can pivot, we can be flexible, and we can continue to make disciples in this type of culture. And it was a huge shift in my mind as far as that book and that thinking of decentralizing and getting that out there, especially since God has given us these resources and tools, to utilize. Yeah.
And I love how you guys are thinking about that engagement piece, because I know that that is a struggle with a lot of, or at least a few of the pastors that I've heard talk about it,
Mhm.
is how do you retain that relationship, and build one when you can't have, a cup of coffee together or something, and really, see the express, and really connect in the ways that I think are somehow, um, just just not possible through even a virtual call. Just
Mhm.
knowing that someone's there for you, and seeing their expression, and we all bring a presence with us. So I think that's still a big struggle, but I think it's great to be, for me, it's interesting to hear some of the things that you guys are doing, because you've been doing it for so long, to engage people, and just shifting the thinking almost down to that individual level, which I think is kind of hard. And it sounds in almost impossible when you have a small team and a big group of people that you're reaching. So I'm curious, how do you guys manage it? You have three campuses. Like, how are you managing all of this? And maybe it's part of the decentralization way you guys do it. I don't know.
Yeah. One of the biggest things then is like making sure uh, you're communicating to your group of volunteers. And so if you've got a campus pastor, that campus pastor each has a team, and that team is communicating to volunteers. So one of the things they really sent out pretty early on in the shutdown was a call list. So everyone in our church got divided, and we got their numbers, and we were tasked with calling these 25, 30 families, and literally on the phone, just a phone call. Here's the script. How can we be praying for you? Is your family safe? Are you okay? What do you need? And putting that all in one document so that everyone can see it and we can stay in touch that way. Now, I mean, if you divide up the staff, it doesn't take that long. Continual care, this is where it gets, hey, I'm one person. I can't care for everybody, but how can we resource the church to be the church and to care for one another? And so that's really some of the tensions we're starting to feel with these online communities. How can we train others to be a part of that? How can we make that accessible? I only host two throughout the week, and that's probably the bandwidth I have. I couldn't add any more groups right now. And so, but I do need things I'm learning, the lessons, I need to pass that on, because that way more people can get a hold of it, and they can continue to do that if that's what Jesus is calling them into. So, short answer to your question, it's a lot of processes and systems that are in place, and we're already in place. We've just been able to kind of be adaptable to that because we already had that built in, the volunteer care and the systems. Planning Center Online is a thing that we utilize. PCO is what we call it. It's got everybody in the church. It's got peoples. It's got services. It's got our groups. So Planning Center is a main hub for communication internally within our staff. So
It's called Planning Center
Planning
Online.
Center Online. Mm-hmm.
Okay. No, that's interesting, because I think you're right. It really comes down to, thinking systematically. And even if you're a small church, of how can you plug in the people you have to support each other? I kind of love that. I mean, and I think churches have done so well in the past, but it's re shifting our mind to say, well, this is now online.
Mm-hmm.
And so what are our communications vehicles? Well, we have the phone. So let's reach out via phone. Let's break that up into groups. I know I do email to a group of people in my church, but phone is better. I need to do that. But again, time limits
Time.
and whatnot. Just seeing how we can all do this together, though, because like that's a lot of people to reach.
Yeah. Yes. And early on, when it became like, it feels like there's a big drive to create a bunch of content. It feels like, okay, we need to have all this content. But then there's the other pull of like care. We need to make sure we're caring for people. So is it care or is it content? Where do I divide my time? What do I do? And so then I think, that tension to live in is probably pretty healthy. And we probably need to listen to Holy Spirit to go, how do you want me to utilize this content, and how is it actually going to help me to care for more people and to lead the sheep well? And I think that's something I can't provide a ton of answers to, but it is a tension that I live in almost daily, because I've still got 10 people on my call list, to be frank with you. It's like I got to get to the list. So
Now that's interesting. And that's, goes back to what you were saying earlier, which, um, again, we're going to show that later. I'm so sorry for that technical difficulty. But you were saying, Drew, the three things that are so important when it comes to online
Yeah.
church, is to activate volunteers, to look at content
Mhm.
and be thoughtful about it. And then growth was another area.
Right.
Kind of touched a little bit on volunteer, a tiny bit on content. Feel
Mhm.
free to comment on those if you have something else, but growth. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we're again, you're in as far as communications marketing world, you're highly skilled in that area, but for us, we're we're looking at doing so we do this daily show, and again, that's a big piece of that is our communication, and so making sure we're doing that well, but also getting that out to people. And so we really just honestly started YouTube ads, trying to push
Oh,
that space a little bit, take a couple dollars and put it in that area. But really, something that I hear about that often is track, like, don't just dump, like, do a little, track it, do a little, track it. Because if you just dump a ton of money into ads, you'll be frustrated when it comes back with low, return on investment. And so really trying to pay attention to what that looks like. So we're starting the YouTube ads, but nothing super crazy. And we'll see where it goes from that. But growth for us has been like viral, word of mouth. Please share, and we're all sing a share song. Kind of like share this with a friend. Hopefully the content is good, and you feel like it's worth sharing. It's something that people will want to lean into. And so that's a lot of times it's just making it accessible to people and then getting it out there. But for us, growth right now are those two veins, word of mouth, and then also starting to put a little bit of dollars behind ads and Google grants, looking into some of that, AdWords, trying to get some of that stuff sliding out there. But I think honestly, if I was to bring a word to someone else, I think it's know your lane. So we talked a little bit about this, like the comparison game gets real dicey where we start looking at other places. What are they doing? What are they doing? And it's like, I think God has you where you are, and you know your people, and you know what they need to hear. And so just do that really well and consistently, and the other people who are similar to them and who they do life with will lean in as well. And so, continue to uh, push into real people, knowing your lane, and then that will continue to grow. So that's what we're trying to do well, trying to figure out our lane and still.
no, that's so good. And to me, that's my wheelhouse, and my favorite thing is who's your audience? Who are the people who are watching? What is it that you do?
Yes.
Because it's sometimes hard to know that because you're in it, and it can be really, really tricky. And so as a church, just to step back, who are the people we reach? What is the sphere that we're actually influencing? Is it families? Are we a church of prayer? Are we an outreach church where we're always going out into the community? Like, what kind of church are you, and what is on the heart of your people? Because there generally is a kind of collectiveness to that. I mean, that draws in certain people. I know my church is all about family and youth. It's just really a wonderful place to be in, and probably why we're called there. But every church has its own call and its own place within the body, which I love. And so I think that's wisdom to just step back and say, well, what are you, and who do you serve, and what has the Lord called you guys to, and what do you really need for your audience? So maybe this will be, online, will be just for this season for a lot of churches, and they'll just go back to what they did before, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But, other churches I'm hearing, are, hey, we like some of this. Let's keep doing some of this, and, go back to maybe that other model, but realizing that that may not have as many people because we're going to be splitting our focus at this point, or maybe moving, hey, this is so good, we're just going to do online now, because there's so many churches where pastors are bivocational and are working everyday jobs. If they could pre-record something and then be there to engage with people on Sunday, wow, that could free up a lot of time for them, and that could be just as effective, and even maybe more effective, in the sense that they can now individually connect with people, or focus on the engagement piece a little bit more, and have that message piece done and off their plate. because I'm sure it's a stressful on Sunday, just I have to prepare, what am I going to say and all this stuff, and maybe you can't, I don't know, I'm not a pastor, but it's a very interesting time we're in. I guess the last thing I might ask you, or if you're willing to share or have any thoughts, and not necessarily for MCC, but what would you want to see as we move forward as a culture in leveraging technology, or from an online church perspective?
Hmm. You know, I typically I go to this phrase like presenting Jesus as a viable option to our culture. You know that following him is a viable way to live your life, you know. And so I think that what we're seeing is the ability to have vulnerable, honest conversations, a lot of that may be just because of the anxiety caused when our health and our financial worlds are being in question. Then we begin to go, what are we building our lives upon? That kind of anxiousness can come in, and we can begin to say, okay, we have one who you can cast all your anxieties on. And so being able to just spread that out and to reach people who maybe wouldn't lean in, or know, they feel as though they probably know kind of what the buildings inside the church are going to say and look like. And they've had maybe some exposure to that and they've said no. We can continue to put the net into the water. We can put the line in the water and we can say, I think you should give another look to who this Jesus is. I think you should probably lean in, and we can have honest conversations about what does it look like to be a disciple, a learner, somebody who's constantly seeking the truth. And we know the truth, and we want to share kind of what that bedrock looks like. So online church, it's an extension of the remnant of God that has always been going forward and will continue to go forward. He was, is to come. And so I just want the online church to just continue to make more and more disciples, and have many Zoom conversations, many video conference conversations as we can. And then hopefully we can share a cup of coffee across the table in person if that's what Jesus wants. But yeah.
I love that. And again, like you're saying, or what I'm kind of taking away is, this is just another tool. It's another vehicle in which we can use to reach people and to talk to people and connect,
Yeah.
with busy schedules. With obviously in our situation now, we don't have a choice. But if things go open up again, then we will have a choice. And I think this is a really interesting way of connecting that maybe was poo-pooed in some ways, or put as a nice to have, whereas now we're forced to take a hard look at how can we truly embrace these different types of tools to create disciples and share the gospel to other people. And for better or worse, it's a vehicle that allows us to do a lot more and duplicate more, almost duplicate ourselves in some ways, and maybe even move with the Holy Spirit. And sometimes where someone comes and sees someone's sermon at just that right time because it's up there now and it really touches or moves them, versus maybe not having that option before. In any case, I'm so grateful for the work that you do and that Manchester Christian has been doing and pioneering. And again, not to say this is the way everyone needs to do it. I think it's just great to hear from some of these larger churches, with teams, how exactly you approach this, because they've been doing it for 3+ years. They've been doing it for some time, and some of us are just getting up to speed and saying, oh my gosh, what do I have to do? What are the best tools? How do we do this? How do we think about it? So thank you so much, Drew, for coming on and sharing a little bit of that with us today. I would love to have you, maybe if there's anything else you want to share, and then close this in prayer.
Well, I'm honored that you would ask me, and I appreciate it, Dina, so much. So thank you.
Awesome. All right, let's
Let me
just
pray.
pray. Yeah.
Yeah. Father, just so encouraged by New Hampshire Alliance and the work that you're doing, the vision you've given to them. I pray for all the churches in this area, Jesus, as we think about specifically what you're doing in New England and how you're moving in homes. We just continue to ask that we would trust, lean in not on our own understanding, but trust in you, acknowledge you, and you'll make these paths straight for us. And so I pray for anyone who is an earshot of this, that is listening. I would ask that you would bless them in this moment. I pray that teams would be built up. God, that you've called some to be apostles and prophets and evangelists, shepherds, teachers, and you've given us all gifts, and it's your wisdom that's going to connect those together, and going to utilize those for the body. And so we pray that happens because of this effort and time today. I thank you for Dina. Pray a blessing over her home, her family, and her ministry. And God, I pray that you would continue to go forth in front of us, protecting, so the devil does not get any footholds or strongholds in this work. And again, we give you all glory and honor and praise, Jesus. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Mhm.
Amen.
Well, thank you, Drew, for being on with us today. And if anyone is interested in the radio show, can you tell us how to find out about that?
Yeah, so on our Manchester Christian Church Facebook page, you can find This Is the Day. And so we record it's a live show, 8 to 9, Monday through Friday. And then it's also on YouTube. So you can, Manchester Christian Church, our YouTube page there, This Is the Day is what it's called. So it's a lot of
Oh,
just tomfoolery. It's encouragement from scripture and tomfoolery, to be honest.
I love that. I think that's wonderful. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Feel free to share this. We're hopeful that some of this conversation is helpful for churches and church members to hear, what other churches are doing, different technology, different communication focuses and ways to engage and rethink maybe how, church could be at this time going forward. Visit us at Net. We are trying to do a live stream every week. And please feel free to post your questions here if there's anything. I'm sure I could shoot it over to Drew or other people in communication that help, answer any questions about, what maybe your church could do, or why certain tools might be good, or other ways to think this through. So thanks again, everyone, and we will talk to you later. Thanks, Drew.
Thank you.